The scanner flashed green, confirming that the ticket was valid. But Vanessa Cole still raised a hand to block the elderly widow. She looked at Margaret's faded coat and old suitcase, then spoke loudly enough for everyone in line to hear. "This line is for first-class passengers. You need to step aside." The aircraft door would close in only a few minutes, and Vanessa had no idea that the woman she was humiliating carried something that could determine the future of NorthStar Airways. The winter morning at Gate B37 was chaotic because of the snow. NorthStar Flight 218 to Seattle had been delayed for nearly an hour, and passengers crowded beneath a departure board that kept changing. Margaret Ellis held her boarding pass with both hands. "My seat is 2A. Vanessa glanced at the seat number, then looked again at Margaret's worn shoes. "The system must have assigned it by mistake. Please move aside so I can assist passengers who belong in this section." Several people turned to watch. Margaret did not react to the whispers. She leaned gently against the handle of her suitcase. Recent hip surgery still made every step painful, and her doctor had warned her not to sit for long periods in a cramped space. "I purchased this ticket," she said. "I need a seat with more room for medical reasons." Maya Patel, a ground service employee who had worked there for 10 months, checked the nearby screen. She reviewed every detail before speaking quietly but clearly. "The ticket was paid in full. The identification matches. Seat 2A has never been changed, and there is no fraud warning on the reservation." "Then we should allow Mrs. Ellis to board," Maya suggested. That was Vanessa's first opportunity to correct her mistake. Instead, she crossed her arms. "You are new, so you do not understand how unusual reservations are handled. I am the supervisor." At that moment, Logan Pierce arrived with an assistant carrying recording equipment. Vanessa's expression changed immediately. She stepped away from the counter, smiled warmly, and greeted him by name. "NorthStar is delighted to welcome you. I am arranging a first-class seat so you can have the best possible experience." Logan looked at the departure board. "But the flight is full. Is there really an available seat?" The original passenger volunteered to change flights. Margaret was standing less than 2 steps away. She watched Vanessa open the record for seat 2A and enter a new note. Passenger voluntarily accepted a lower-class seat for personal reasons. A yellow warning appeared, requiring the passenger's signature or recorded verbal approval. Maya immediately stepped closer. "We cannot continue unless Mrs. Ellis agrees." Vanessa used her supervisor code to override the warning. That was her second opportunity to stop, and she deliberately ignored it. Margaret looked directly at her. Her voice was not loud, but everyone nearby became quiet. "If I did not know anyone important and did not have the strength to argue, would that make my ticket less valid?" Vanessa closed the screen. "If you continue interfering with the boarding process, I will call security." Maya froze. She suddenly remembered her mother being shouted at in an airport because she did not speak English well. Maya wanted to object, but her student loans and the job supporting her made her hands turn cold. Vanessa pointed toward another computer. "Leave this position now." Before stepping away, Maya quietly used her phone to photograph the original record for seat 2A, the exact time Vanessa changed the data, and the supervisor code used to bypass the passenger approval. She turned off her phone screen just as Vanessa looked back. "She was only doing her job," Margaret said. "Do not punish her for checking the truth." Maya looked at the older woman, unable to understand why someone being denied her own rights was still trying to protect another person. Margaret pulled her suitcase aside. When the scarf wrapped around the handle slipped, an old luggage tag became visible. On the scratched metal was an older version of NorthStar's silver wing logo, one Maya had never seen before. Beneath it was the code NS02. Margaret bent down to adjust the tag. Her other hand instinctively touched the inside pocket of the coat that had once belonged to Samuel. Her husband's final letter was still there. She was carrying it with her on the trip to Seattle to visit his grave. On the screen, a special contact symbol briefly appeared, beside the record for Seat 2A. Maya did not have time to read it before Vanessa transferred the seat to Logan. Then Vanessa locked Margaret's boarding pass and marked it as requiring additional verification. Logan accepted the new boarding pass, but continued looking toward Margaret. "Will she be given another seat?" "That is not something you need to worry about," Vanessa replied, still smiling for the camera. The announcement system at Gate B37 activated. "NorthStar Flight 218 to Seattle will close boarding in 5 minutes. Margaret tried scanning her pass again. The machine sounded a red warning. She had not only lost her first-class seat, she could no longer board the flight she had already purchased. Margaret tightened her hand around the suitcase handle to keep her balance while Vanessa invited Logan into the priority boarding lane. Maya returned to the computer. A new message had just arrived from the office of the board of directors. "Confirm Margaret Ellis's location immediately. The aircraft must not depart without her." Before Maya could call Vanessa, the telephone at Gate B37 rang. Maya answered, and Daniel Ross's voice came through clearly and urgently. "Mrs. Ellis is carrying the deciding vote on the future of NorthStar. Why is she still not on the aircraft?" Maya was still holding the telephone to her ear when 2 men appeared at the end of the corridor. Ethan Caldwell and Daniel Ross had just arrived on a connecting flight, with snow still clinging to their coats. They were supposed to attend a shareholder meeting in Seattle, but all their attention was now focused on Gate B37. Vanessa stepped forward to greet them. "Mr. Caldwell, we are dealing with a passenger using a suspicious first-class ticket. She has also disrupted the boarding process." Ethan looked in the direction she indicated. Margaret stood outside the priority line, holding her old suitcase with one hand and leaning on the extended handle with the other to reduce the pain in her hip. "Where is the ticket?" he asked. Margaret did not reveal who she was. She handed him the boarding pass and answered calmly. "Please examine it first, then check who changed the record and how it was changed." Daniel accepted the pass. When he glanced toward the suitcase, he noticed the silver wings and the code NS02. His eyes stopped there. Then he slowly studied the woman's face. "Mrs. Ellis?" Margaret gave a slight nod. Daniel stepped forward and spoke loudly enough for the waiting passengers to hear. "Margaret Ellis, the largest shareholder of NorthStar Airways. The entire board of directors is waiting for her in Seattle." Gate B37 fell silent. The scanner slipped from Vanessa's hand and struck the counter lightly. Logan looked at the boarding pass for Seat 2A that he had just received, then at the woman who had been pushed out of line. Ethan confirmed that Margaret controlled 21% of NorthStar's voting shares, the largest percentage held by any individual. The board was evenly divided over an outsourcing proposal, which meant her vote could determine the future of hundreds of employees. Vanessa was asked to explain herself. She took a deep breath and said she had only been protecting the airline from possible fraud. According to her, the situation had become difficult because Margaret had not revealed her identity from the beginning. Margaret looked at her. I should not need to be a shareholder for my ticket to be valid. Ethan turned toward security and prepared to suspend Vanessa immediately. Margaret raised a hand to stop him. Do not decide guilt out of anger. Preserve the security footage, lock the data editing history, take Maya's statement separately, and protect employees from retaliation. Ethan remained silent for a moment, then ordered the Operations Control Department to carry out each request. Vanessa was removed from the computer. Her system access was temporarily locked, so no information could be changed or deleted. Maya opened her phone with trembling hands. The photographs showed that Seat 2A belonged to Margaret before the alteration, that the ticket scanner had flashed green, and that Vanessa had used a supervisor code to bypass the passenger approval requirement. I told her twice that the ticket was valid, Maya said. Mrs. Ellis never agreed to accept a lower-class seat. Another witness stepped forward. Logan handed his phone to Ethan. A message from Vanessa had been sent before Margaret reached the counter. I will arrange a first-class seat. Just remember to mention NorthStar in your post. Logan removed the Seat 2A boarding pass from his passport. I asked whether the seat was actually available. She told me the original passenger had voluntarily changed flights. I did not know that passenger was standing right beside us. The security recording from Gate B37 was opened in the operations room. It clearly showed the scanner flashing green, Maya confirming the ticket twice, and Vanessa overriding the warning requiring the passenger's consent. Vanessa continued claiming that she had only made a customer service decision for a high-profile guest during a chaotic situation. But the information on the screen left her explanation with no support. Logan returned the seat. I will not board an aircraft using a seat obtained through a lie. Vanessa was removed from duty to prevent interference with the evidence, but Ethan did not declare her guilty or terminate her employment. Margaret's original ticket and priority boarding rights were restored. Before walking through the gate, she turned around. I want written confirmation that Maya will not be disciplined for following the rules. Ethan ordered Human Resources to send the confirmation immediately. Only after Maya received it did Margaret board the aircraft. Inside the first-class cabin, Margaret sat in Seat 2A and removed Samuel's letter from the inside pocket of his old coat. The folds had softened with age. She opened it to the familiar sentence. If NorthStar ever forgets the people behind the numbers, remind them where we began. Outside the window, the snow-covered runway slowly disappeared behind them. While the flight continued toward Seattle, Daniel ordered the auditors to examine every record marked as a voluntary seat change that Vanessa had processed during the previous 12 months. By the time the aircraft landed, a preliminary report had arrived. The same supervisor code had been used to change seats 23 times. 17 of the affected passengers were over 60 years old. 9 had submitted complaints, but Vanessa had marked every case as resolved. Maya had secretly preserved 3 of those complaints. Ethan studied the list, his expression growing serious. What had happened to Margaret was no longer a single poor decision at Gate B37. The numbers that once made the system appear clean now revealed that someone had learned how to hide the truth inside that same system. He looked up and asked, if these records have been concealed for an entire year, how many figures in the restructuring plan can we still trust? Before going to the meeting, Margaret asked the driver to stop at the cemetery overlooking Seattle Bay. A thin layer of snow covered the ground around Samuel Ellis's grave. She removed the NS-02 luggage tag from her suitcase, placed it beside her husband's name, and sat on the cold stone bench. "I stayed away for too long," she whispered. "I thought the beautiful reports meant that what you built was still being protected." Margaret returned the tag to her suitcase. She understood that grief had kept her silent, while NorthStar moved further away from its original values. In the board of directors meeting room, Ethan presented the plan to outsource ground services. The charts promised millions of dollars in savings, but behind those numbers were hundreds of employees who could lose their jobs. Before the vote, Margaret asked Daniel to present the preliminary report from Gate B37. He stood and confirmed that Margaret represented 21% of NorthStar's voting shares, making her the airline's largest individual shareholder. The board was evenly divided, so her vote could determine the result. Maya appeared through a secure video connection. She described everything from the moment the ticket for Seat 2A scanned green to the moment Vanessa locked Margaret's boarding pass. Then Maya lowered her head and admitted that she had remained silent during several similar incidents because she feared losing the job that helped her repay her student debt. Margaret did not blame her. A young employee should not have to risk her livelihood simply to ask a supervisor to follow the rules. The evidence appeared on the screen one item at a time: security footage from Gate B37, the valid ticket scan, the editing history for Seat 2A. Maya's photographs from before and after the change, the message promising Logan a seat, the complaints that had been improperly closed, and the list of passengers who had lost their seats. System records showed that the same supervisor code had been used 23 times. 17 affected passengers were over 60 years old. 9 had submitted complaints. Another internal document showed that employees had been encouraged to prioritize influencers and corporate travelers in order to improve ratings from high-profile passengers. Ethan looked at the performance measures he had once used to manage the airline. He admitted that the reward system had valued social media attention more than fair treatment for passengers. Margaret held her voting document. Everyone expected her to reject the outsourcing plan as punishment for the people who had humiliated her. Instead, she said, "I vote to delay the plan, not to reject it permanently." She requested an independent review of employee protections, operational safety, the effect on elderly passengers and passengers with disabilities, the complaint process, and the airline's use of high-profile customer ratings. If this plan is truly necessary, NorthStar must prove that its savings are not built by sacrificing the people who are least able to defend themselves. The board approved the delay and opened an independent investigation. Vanessa was suspended while the evidence was reviewed. No final judgment was made under pressure from the public. 6 weeks later, the investigation confirmed that she had deliberately changed records in multiple cases, described forced downgrades as voluntary, improperly closed complaints, and pressured employees who objected. Her goal had been to improve high-profile service scores and impress influential passengers so she could earn a regional management position. Vanessa was terminated through the proper process for discrimination, falsifying records, and retaliating against employees. She was not publicly humiliated, but she was no longer able to hide behind the numbers she had altered. The affected passengers received refunds for the difference in ticket price, compensation required by policy, personal apologies, and access to the complete history of changes made to their seats. NorthStar introduced new procedures. No passenger could be downgraded without direct confirmation. Every attempt to override a warning required approval from 2 employees. A person named in a complaint could not close that complaint. The airline created an assistance team for elderly passengers, strengthened protections for whistleblowers, and removed social media engagement from customer service performance targets. Maya completed supervisory training and passed a professional evaluation. She earned a promotion because of her ability, integrity, and work performance, not only because she had once helped Margaret. Logan provided every message he had received, published an apology, and refused payment for promotional work. Ethan remained chief executive officer, but he was required to report directly to the board of directors on every stage of the reform. He ordered that performance reports include real feedback from passengers and employees beside the numerical results. Margaret used part of her dividends to establish the Samuel Ellis Fund for Safety and Dignity. It supported training for frontline employees and emergency transportation expenses for workers. She did not accept an executive position. She returned to her small home, continued riding the bus, and participated only in periodic oversight meetings. During the public announcement of the reforms, a copy of the NIS-02 luggage tag was placed inside the training room, beneath the words, "Every passenger deserves to be seen." Margaret stood at the back of the room and watched Maya train a group of new employees. She asked, "If no one had known that I owned shares that day, would my ticket have been restored?" Maya looked at her and answered, "From now on, it must be restored no matter who the passenger is." Margaret recovered seat 2A because she had power. But justice appeared only when people without shares received protection under the same rules. The love Samuel left behind became responsibility. Maya's courage created hope, and verified truth changed an entire system. What would you have done in Margaret's place? Would you have demanded Vanessa's immediate termination at the departure gate or chosen a fair investigation before making a decision? Share your thoughts and continue following Stewart's stories, stories of love, hope, and justice.